Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I am G, as always, and today I'm going to be showing off everything that I got for the month of March. A lot of stuff, namely, there's some new releases and I have quite a bit of anime, but I think the bulk of this month's pickups are actually because I received my US proxy. So for people who haven't watched my videos before or haven't been watching for very long, I very often, well not very often, but on occasion, especially if a release or a particular, I find something on sale or I'm wanting to buy something but they only post to the United States, I have a proxy service that I use and it has a very long storage period, free storage period I should say, which is very good, and it allows me to buy quite a few things over a long period of time. And then once I have a lot of things, I decide to, put them all together and have them posted to me on a couple times a year, if that, maybe once a year. So, yeah, I was able to get those things this month. But yeah, rather than spend too long on this intro, I'll get straight into it. I hope you guys enjoy. So first off, we have some merchandise. These are, as probably expected from me at this point, we have not one, but two of the free birthday clear files. One from January, one from February. So this is, the first one is Hiyori, whose birthday is in late January, apparently, 20th of Jan, as you can see there. And then I also have Rin Matsuoka, obviously one of the main characters of the series, whose birthday is the 2nd of February. Yeah, as per usual, these are just my normal free birthday merchandise purchases. They come out like in the same month that their birthday is. Obviously they're not real people. This is just great marketing from Kyoto Animation. I have all of the birthday releases for this series, which is like 7 years of birthday merchandise now. It's so many years. And someday I may be free from this prison, but I still have 4 or 5 of this particular set to get. I've purchased them, I just haven't received them yet, so they haven't been released yet. So yeah, and with those I also got a flyer for the Final Strike film and release. And then as they've been doing recently, it also included a little pin badge from Kyoto Animation, just thanking people for supporting the merch store, following their issues or their major tragedy that they had several years ago now at this point, which is kind of amazing to consider. So yeah, Kyoto Animation. I also got a figure this month. Oh my gosh. This is one that I pre-ordered immediately because it's amazing and turned out amazing. Super happy to have him. This is the Yearling Patriarch version of Wei Wuxian. I cannot put him, it is a big 1/8, I believe, scale figure, so I'm very carefully holding him. Yeah, amazing figure. I have quite a few scale figures for, well, I have the other scale figure from Good Smile for Modao Zushi, which has Wei Wuxian and Lanzhan, the two main characters, obviously. I also have the, I guess, scale child version of this character when he's a little bab. I already have that one. I've shown it off a little while ago. And I have Lanzhan's version of that as well, which is hopefully shipping to me very, very soon, because it has already been released in China, but we will see as to when locally I get my version. Yeah, beautiful release. People have complained or have noted that this piece of, you know, solid or kind of softer plastic blood effect starts to droop after a while. I don't know whether that's just due to climate. I've only unboxed them for a couple of days, so who knows whether that will start to droop. But it's quite, like, I don't really, like, I expect that from some figures. It's an unfortunate reality of, like, gravity, and it's certainly not exclusive to this particular figure. It's not even necessarily a measure of poor quality. It just usually means there needs to be a little bit more support in some of these. But typically, if you just heat it up with a hairdryer, it fixes itself, or you can remold it into shape, which is not obviously the answer that people want to hear, but like this, that's just the reality of figures. And hopefully, if you keep your room with figures in it fairly climate controlled, you can mitigate a lot of heat and sun related issues. I say that as someone who's always had open windows and full sun with around, you know, my books and my figures and stuff, and never really had a notable impact on them. And I live in Australia where summers get pretty freaking hot, so yeah, I can't really speak to the specifics as to that. Maybe I'm just less picky than some people. I don't know. But yes, so happy to finally have this figure. It turned out amazing. Next we have a fanzine that I got for this month. This was also my proxy box. This is an artist who I have followed for quite a few years now. This is actually a fanzine of why I started following her. So this is Yuri and Ice. I think this is a reprint of the original fanzine and contains a whole bunch of lovely artwork. Yeah, I believe this artist, Ameja or Ameya, I don't know, decided to do a small reprint of this particular book, or maybe collected all of their artwork for the series for the first time in this book, and so I decided to get it. I think it was US only postage, so that's why it was with my proxy stuff. It also came with a bunch of little bits and pieces, including a bookmark and pin badges and a sticker. So yeah, very wonderful. On to the anime. I'll start with the limited editions first. The first one is an old limited edition. I got it during one of the Christmas sales, because I have seen this show before. I actually watched it as it came out via streaming. I believe I even used to own this limited edition at some point, but it was super. I don't have it anymore. I don't remember if I bought it or if I did. I think I did used to own this, and I sold it in some capacity, or maybe I gave it to a friend or something. I don't know. I've been watching and collecting anime for far too long. I don't remember the specifics of every single thing in the collection. But I watched this as it came out. It's not a perfect show. It's certainly, I would think it's one that not a lot of people remember that fondly. It's certainly a curious one, and I don't think it's inherently like a must watch, but it is an interesting idea. But the reason I got this during the Christmas sales is, one, I'm a big fan of this director specifically. And also it was super duper cheap. Obviously trying to just clear out the rest of like Funimation's old limited edition stock. This is before they announced the like full merger and takeover of Right Stuff. But this is C, the money of soul and possibility control. Yeah, this is a DVD Blu-ray release of a series that's about like, it's about economics or economic principles, but there's like Pokemon style battles. Our main character discovers, is ambushed by, I don't really, it's been many years. I want to say it's been over 10 years. It has been over 10 years since I've seen the show. So apologies if my memory as to the specifics is not like 100% on this one. But it's this dude, university student, I think, and this girl who she represents something. I don't know. They have to fight economically, fight like actual, but then it has an effect on the Japanese economy. I don't know. It's, as I said, it's weird. I namely bought this because, as I said, I'm a fan of the director. This is the same director as Gatchaman Crowds, as well as Mononoke, which is like the major one that I think most people would know. Very interesting visual style. I'm not going to say, again, I don't think this is like a must watch. I don't even inherently think it's like a hidden gem, but it is an interesting curiosity. And it's not like bad. It's not offensive. It's just kind of a little, from my memory, it's a little bit convoluted and confused. I think it gets too bogged down in like the weird premise of it and gets a little bit yeah, like I don't think it inherently uses the economics side of it very well, or what it was trying to do I just don't think appealed to a lot of people, which is understandable because it's just like it's just a weird approach to take for a series. But as a like original idea, I think like there's potential here. It just is, yeah, it's a weird one, and it's an older one. I feel like I'm turning to dust when I say that, because I watched this when I was doing my economics units in my first year of university. First or second, yeah, I was in uni, early in my uni career. So yeah, this is a show that's certainly not stood the test of time. I don't know how many people even know this series exists. But for me, it was like $5, $8, whatever they put for these old limited editions during Right Stuff Christmas sales. The stuff that they're just trying to get rid of all of the dead stock for. So yeah, I picked it up. Next, we have a much more recent limited edition. I got this locally. Well, yeah, I got it from Crunchyroll's Australian branch, I guess. And this is a series I already own. It's a series that is very nostalgic for a lot of people, and is a series that I do recommend. And that is Yu Hakusho. This is the 30th anniversary Blu-ray box set. It has all 4 seasons, or all 112 episodes, plus the new OVAs on Blu-ray. The big thing about this is that it doesn't have the previous film and OVAs that Funimation released on DVD only. So what I'm doing is I'm getting a Blu-ray case with 3 discs in it, and then just switching out that last Blu-ray case in this set so I can have that movie and OVA set, and then the new DVDs, and then the new Blu-ray set OVAs in there. So it'll all be collected in one package. As for my previous UHaul Show releases, I just have the Anime Classics version. I don't think it's any better or worse than this edition. So it's a double dip, not a huge, you know, I don't mind justifying it. I do really enjoy this series. For those who don't know, this is Yoshihiro Togashi's first smash hit shonen series, about a boy delinquent who, after getting hit by a car, becomes like a ghost detective. He kind of has to solve problems. Initially that's the premise. He teams up with a god of death and is trying to help people. But then very quickly turns into a more generic action shonen tournament style series. Really, really good. A lot of fun. All of the characters are great, and is certainly a classic, still regarded very highly. And you can see a lot of Togashi's initial playing around with ideas that he later introduces into with a little bit more development, I should say, in stuff like Hunter x Hunter. So yeah, I really enjoy this series. I think the anime is a great adaptation. It's not a one-to-one adaptation of the manga, but considering how that manga kind of ended and how Togashi wrapped it up, I think this, for fans, is a little bit more satisfying. I like both, but this does feel like a complete product. It doesn't feel like you're getting a lesser adaptation, even though it came out kind of as the manga was still running / before it ended. Yeah, it's a good time. Check it out if you haven't. It's certainly a mainstay of this sort of action battle shonen for a reason. The last limited edition that I got for this month is also from the Australian branch of Crunchyroll, aka what formerly known as Madman, but they're fully branded as Crunchyroll now. And this is the Stranger by the Shore limited edition. This is a BL film based off of the manga of the same name. And so it has a book with it. It's just one disc, one Blu-ray disc. So this is the story of a struggling author who one day he sees a local teen sitting very gloomily on a bench. They are living on a very small island in Japan, and he talks to him, kind of reaches out to him, and just kind of goes on with his life. He's like, oh, this young person with all the hopes and dreams in life ahead of him. But jump cut to a couple years. So this, and the younger teen, he's moving to the big city, Tokyo, I believe Tokyo, to live with family and to finish his education, because the reason he was sitting on this bench so gloomily is because his mother had just died. And he never knew his father or anything, or his father died when he was young. Regardless, he doesn't have any family on this island anymore, so he's gone to the big city to just kind of live the rest of his life. Jump cut several years later, he is back. He's 20, 21, and he's back to not only thank this author for reaching out, even if he didn't really want to be appealed to, but to declare his love, to tell him he fell head over heels and is now here to be his boyfriend. And the two have their ups and downs, but subsequently get together. This is a manga that I follow and I am up to date with. It has a sequel series, which is still ongoing. This only adapts that first volume, which is a self-contained book. And it adapts it very well. This is quite spicy. We have some intimate scenes in this, so it's not like, well, I don't know. It's probably fine to watch, like, if you know what you're getting into. It's not one to show grandma, maybe, is probably the way to put that. This is not one for your grandparents or your parents, inherently. But good, beautiful adaptation. The actual animation is really wonderful. This is also another shorter film in the same way that Dokusei or Classmates is, where I think it might be an hour, it might be 45 minutes, I'm not 100% sure, but considering it's just a single volume they're adapting, that makes sense. In the same way that Dokusei is just a single volume adapting, therefore it was only an hour. I actually don't mind that, and I think this is a pretty good way to be adapting some of these BL films. We saw it also with Twittering Birds Never Fly. That adapted more volumes, but was a longer film. So for some of these adaptations that are only like one or two volumes, Kase-san and Morning Glory also is reminiscent of this, where that's only 45 minutes to an hour. I think it's really a smart way to do it, and specifically for this film, if you're a fan of the manga, try the anime. I know it's streaming on Crunchyroll's platform now. It is dubbed as well. Yeah, happy to have it, and really nice that we got a limited edition of this one. Wasn't expecting that. On to some standard Blu-ray releases for anime. The first one being another film, another short one. Haven't seen this one, can't speak to the quality of it, but this is Happy Go Lucky Days, released by Sentai. Both of the things that I'm going to show off next are from Sentai Filmworks. This is just a 55-minute movie about love and connections, and I don't know. The reason that this one stands out to me, or that it interested me when I first heard about it, is obviously the character design. You can tell is by Takako Shimura of Wandering Sun and Sweet Blue Flowers fame. What's her current series? Even Though We're Adults, that one as well. So yeah, this pretty much, that's the only reason I bought this, aside from I'm interested in these kind of anthology, I guess, stories wherein there's multiple character stories being woven together. I don't know how episodic it feels. Again, I haven't watched it, so I cannot speak to the quality or whether it was pulled off well. For me, I specifically got this one due to the fact of the character designer. And also it's cheap. I got it during a Sentai sale, as I did with the next one. Those are the reasons. I don't often buy Sentai stuff unless it's for a series that just hasn't gotten a local release or a UK release. I typically go for a UK release because I find that they maintain a lot of the historically, they've maintained or duplicated the limited edition aspects of a lot of US releases, but also it's a Region B release, which works here in Australia. And if that fails, then I'll get the US limited edition release or the US release. But if it's a standard series, like a standard release, I'll try to get the local release, which nowadays is like all of Funimation / Crunchyroll stuff, with the odd thing here and there. The great homogenization of anime that's happened over the last couple of years is sad. It's really sad. But in saying all of that, there's quite a few, especially Sentai releases, that don't get picked up for distribution here in Australia. So those are the ones that I will get during a Sentai sale specifically, because also their sales are like stupid cheap. So yeah, happy go lucky days. The other series that I picked up during a Sentai sale is one that, again, hasn't had a local release here. It's also based off of a manga that I adore. I was going to watch the streaming, and then this was like available for $5 or something during the sale. So I was like, I'll just buy it. If I don't like it, I'll sell it. And it won't be, a huge loss on my part. But this is Hakume and Mikochi, Tiny Little Life in the Woods. This is a 12 episodes? Yeah, 12 episodes in an OVA on Blu-ray. Yeah, this series, as I said, I haven't watched this adaptation, but the series is about two young women who are like teensy tiny people. It's a very like whimsical fantasy setting, very much in the line of I've spoken about this before regarding like the actual manga. For those who know like the Borrowers series or similarly Arrietty from Ghibli, which is an adaptation of that, there used to be an old English cartoon about small people, like a very Thumbelina-esque story where there's little teeny people and then there's just like sentient animals, and they live in this, amalgamation. And this particular story is set in this lovely little township in the woods, and all these forest creatures and these little teensy people kind of coexist. And so Hakume and Mikochi they live together. They're very different personalities. Hakume is the redhead here. She's very outgoing, very energetic. She works she works in construction. So she helps build walls and like maintain the infrastructure around the area. And then Mikochi, who is this character here, she's a lot more subdued and a bit more proper. She's grown up. I think she's grown up in the area. In this specific area. She's a bit more of a city girl, quote unquote. But she's also very good with, like, she creates and produces products for sale. She's a fantastic cook. She's a fantastic seamstress. And she does a lot of very fine, highly detailed, highly skilled work. They're both very skilled, but in kind of very different ways. And again, they're very different personalities, but they've got a very close relationship and they live together. And so this is just a series about the two of them, their day-to-day lives. It's a slice of life, Iyashikei style of series, and all of the people and creatures and that they meet, and all of the wonderful experiences they have together, and all of the interesting, quirky adventures that they go on. The manga is phenomenal. I adore the manga, and hopefully this anime captures even just like a small part of that, and if it does, then they've got a good thing. On to manga. As always, I will start with the debuts and finales and one-shots from this month, and then I'll go into my ongoing titles. First is in large trim. We have one debut. I think this is, I don't know whether this is a more recent printing or if, I don't know, it's just been such a high demand / low availability of printing materials that this only just got to me now. But this is the first volume of Yokohama Kaidashi Kiko by Hitoshi Ashinano. This is the deluxe edition, which is a 2-in-1 omnibus. And this is kind of the grandparent of Iyashikei. It's regarded as a classic within the genre. It's about an android who's living in Yokohama in this kind of I don't want to say post-apocalyptic, but it kind of is. Something has happened and society has crumbled, and there's still people around and society kind of still is chugging along, but the Yokohama of current era no longer exists. I think it might be because of climate crisis, which is like a horrifyingly relatable and possible thing. But our main character, she's an android and she runs a cafe. And again, it's just her day-to-day life and traveling around. When this book initially was released, there was a lot of complaints about the print quality. I don't know whether it was just a specific batch that was affected, or like the print files weren't up to par. It really was printed very messily. A lot of detail was lost, and it just really didn't look very good, which obviously caused a lot of people to be very upset, understandably. This was a very, very highly anticipated release, so the fact that it wasn't as good as it could or should have been, people got upset. Flipping through this particular edition, I don't see any of those issues in this, even in like panels with a lot of detail, a lot of screen tone usage. There's never that blurriness that I saw from screen caps from when this book was first released last year. So I don't know whether they recalled their stock and kind of gave this a new batch of printing. Looking at the back, there's nothing to indicate that this is like a second print run. Normally it would say after that first printing, like second printing and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know that this is actually a second print run. I would say it's probably a fixed print run, or after those initial copies had so many complaints, they halted production and either recalled books that they could, or they just went with a different publisher, or a printer, I should say, not a publisher. Yeah, I cannot speak to whether those issues that were flagged were specifically to like a batch of 2,000 copies or whatever, and the others are fine because they were under different different printers. I don't know. We are in a very unsure world even still regarding printing, paper accessibility. It's just there's such high demand for manga, there's such high demand for books and paper that it doesn't surprise me that there's been ongoing issues with print quality. In saying that, as I said, people were very in their right to get upset. This doesn't look like it's affected by those issues. So if you are a fan, but you were upset by that, put off by, you know, the fact that it wasn't a perfect release, a copy that you can get currently doesn't look like all copies are affected in the same way. So if you are wanting to track down your own copy, it might be an idea to go into a bookstore and flip through and see if there's a difference. Yeah, your prerogative. As I said, this was a highly anticipated release. It was a kind of miracle license for a lot of people, and it is really nice that we've finally gotten this series in English. The other debut / finale that I got this month is actually kind of both. These are very old releases. These I got through my US proxy because I was able to find copies of these books in the US. And so I just had them there, and they are finally here. So now I can finally start reading the series. So this is the old, very old at this point, CMX edition of Swan by Ariyoshi Kyoko. This is volume 1. I also have volume 2. And finally, last but certainly not least, volume 15, which is the last book that was ever released by CMX for the series, which is a shame because 15 is not the last volume. Swan is, as you can probably tell, a shoujo manga about ballet, and is one that is, although unfinished, certainly a series that a lot of shoujo manga collectors, classic shoujo fans, have been chomping at the bit for, either trying to piece together these old CMX releases or hoping for a license rescue. I have very, very little hope that this series will ever get rescued, namely because it's 24 volumes, I think, in Japanese. And it's just like classic shoujo. I love it. A lot of people I know and are close to in this community adore it. It's certainly not something that has the broad appeal as a lot of even the other classic manga that we are getting in English. Classic manga is still a bit of a difficult sell for a lot of people, a lot of modern manga fans, which is sad because it shouldn't be, but it is. That's just the reality. And hopefully one day a publisher will prove me wrong and say, you know what? We will release Swan, and I will be as jubilant as anyone, but I don't expect that. I'm a realist, unfortunately. But yeah, this now completes my collection of Swan in English. So as I said, I can finally actually read it. I'm so excited. I've had volumes 3 to 14 for a very long time. I got from various secondhand sources, and these obviously are secondhand as well. At least one is an ex-library copy. So yes, my collection is finally complete for this series, and I cannot wait to dive into it. Next, onto the ongoing manga. The first one being the only like deluxe edition, I guess, I have for this. I always start with the large trim and go to the standard trim size. But this is a deluxe edition. Probably no surprise to anyone. This is Berserk, volume 13 of the deluxe edition. I have to hold it because it's too big to fit on that shelf. Berserk needs no real introduction. The dark fantasy series that inspired an entire genre. I got this just the other day, so I haven't read it. But again, this series really doesn't need any introduction. The story of the Black Swordsman Guts on his, quest to get revenge against his former friend and colleague Griffith, who not only irreparably changed Guts' life, but, ruined the lives of the people he cared about. And so he's, now being hunted by demons and is just trying to make things right. But as time goes by and Guts meets more people, maybe his goals have changed. Obviously, as I said, this is a series that needs no introduction. It is hugely popular. It is one of those series that gets recommended by everyone, everywhere, even if it's a totally terrible recommendation for that particular individual. And admittedly, as I've said before, I am a newer fan of Berserk. I had read a handful of volumes previously, but it wasn't until the untimely death of Kentaro Miura that I actually sat down and properly read like the first 15 volumes or so. And I know everyone's like, oh yeah, volume 14, like that's when it not gets good, but that first arc, proper arc from volume 5 to 14 is the one that like hooks people and will change your life. Admit it didn't change my life. I'll straight up say that it didn't change my life. I'm very broadly read, not just in manga, but just generally. So it's not like any of this content was new, but it did give me an appreciation for the story that Miura was telling, and it allowed me to kind of discover this series in a way that appealed to myself. And yeah, obviously a lot of people love this series. It's one that has stood the test of time, and even though it is still like it will be unfinished by Miura due to his untimely death, it continues on. It continues on thanks to his very close friend who has been appointed to continue the story, and his assistants at his studio. So we will see more Berserk in some capacity, but this particular volume collects up to volume 39 in the singles, and then the next one, volume 14, will be the last of Miura's actual manga, because he passed away whilst working on chapters for volume 40 or 41. So I don't know how Dark Horse is going to continue the series in the deluxe editions, whether they will release a 2-volume deluxe edition and then kind of restart these books with the new, like with not a new style, but like with the acknowledgement that it's a different team working on it, with Miura's story and outlines and stuff. But it isn't. He's no longer alive. He doesn't have any input directly to the new story or the rest of the story. I mean, again, he does, it's his storyline, and his outlines, but he's not writing the manga, and we will never know how he properly would finish it, because he didn't have the chance to do that. Yeah, I don't know, we'll see. And if nothing else, this is a really well done deluxe release for a beloved series. Okay, more ongoing manga. This is for the standard large trim size. First and foremost is the series that I look forward to the most, which is saying a lot because I do love a lot of these series that I'm following, but this one is one that was a huge win for me in regards to personal licensing, and this is Shonen Note Volume 2, Shonen Note Boy Soprano by Yuki Kamitani. This is the story of a middle school choir, and our main character is a young boy, just started middle school, who has just the most beautiful soprano voice, and that just inspires people, right? He's just so talented. But as is life, unfortunately, when boys get older, they lose that beautiful soprano because their voice changes, because puberty is the thing. So in order to kind of capture that beautiful soprano, whilst it still exists, he is not only, encouraged in the school choir, but he's also been brought into the local opera group. And soon, next volume, we're going to be introduced, hopefully, fingers crossed, to his kind of counterpart, his Russian counterpart, who is a very famous soprano, male soprano singer. And yeah, I love Yuki Kamitani's works. They are phenomenal. For those who don't know, this is the same creator as Our Dreams at Dusk and Nabari no O, both of which I own. Hiraith is also from them, and that is also from Kodansha digitally. Yeah, this is just a beautiful release. This particular volume focuses on this character here on the cover. He is the captain, he's the head of the school choir club, and so this volume really focuses on his insecurities, his life, his personality. It's fantastic. I mean, Kamitani is just so good. So good. The art is beautiful. The characters are phenomenal. It's an emotional ride from start to end. I was gonna say gut punch. It's that too. But yeah, I mean, longtime Kamitani fans like myself, definitely check this one out. I've said it before. And I said it just prior at the beginning of this was a personal win for me, not only because I'm a big Kamitani fan, but specifically this was made for me because, oh my god, I was the choir kid. I was in choir from as soon as I qualified, which was 8 or 9 years old, all the way through high school. So choir is I love singing, and I was a soprano back in the day. Obviously, very different for female soprano versus male soprano. Very different experiences. And so when I saw that one of my favorite mangaka had written a choir manga, I was like, oh my god, I didn't realize that Kamitani was reading my mind. So yeah, check this one out if you haven't. It just continues to be wonderful. Speaking of wonderful series, I got the newest volume of Magus of the Library. This is also from Kodansha. This is by Mitsu Izumi. So this is a fantasy series about a young boy who is initially, like, he's ostracized from his small town because he doesn't look like everyone else. He is half of a magical race, which are not elves, but they definitely are elves. And so because he doesn't look like the rest of the townsmen, he's just ostracized. But thanks to the kind words and support from a wandering Kafka, which is like a librarian, it inspires him to become a librarian himself. And so he goes, when he's 13, he decides to go to the big city to qualify, just to try and get in to be a Kafka. In this part of the story, he is in. He passed the test. Sorry, spoilers. We wouldn't have much of a story if he didn't, but that was several volumes ago. He's now currently in training to become a Kafka, and, you know, meeting all of the other people, again, all from very different backgrounds. There's kind of a more generic human race, and there's like I don't want to say odd, they all have names. I don't know any of them. I'm sorry, I'm not going to remember them. There's kind of a beastman race. And there's a girl in this group of trainees who's in there. There is also like a fairy type of race, the teensy with wings. There's just like a whole bunch of them. And so this is the first time this character has kind of been in a multicultural setting, but because he is, you know, half elf, half of this elven race, and elves don't really exist within society anymore after a genocidal war wherein they were almost all killed for being elves. He's the only person who looks like him, and so in a way he stands out even more. And interestingly, like, and I've spoken about this before regarding the series, that like, obviously, like, it's a very fine line when you're doing fantasy racism, because, you know, there's real life racism, and the groups that real life racism affects are not the same groups that fantasy racism, you know, affects, or who are affected by in fantasy racism. And in this series, it's not like that is an issue. The regular humans, quote unquote, are all brown, dark skinned. And so for our main character, who's like blonde and green-eyed and white, being, you know, discriminated against by a society of brown people, is like, I know what you're trying to do, but also, like, brown people of color, especially, like, very heavily coded Middle Eastern people, they are not the bigots, and they are not the, you know, the ones who in this dynamic are the ones perpetuating racism in real life. And it's not a good idea to not, again, you know, insane. That is a negative aspect of this series, just generally, but it's a negative aspect of fantasy racism in any capacity. It's not Izumi's, like, lack of talent. It's not, you know, an issue that is specific to this series. It's just all around fantasy racism is usually not a good idea. In saying that, this particular volume was very interesting in how it addressed bigotry and how it addressed people's like how you challenge belief systems, and if it's your place to challenge belief systems. Because there is a character in this, one of these girls, human girls, who follows or comes from a family who follows like a very strict religion that kind of considers itself far above like everyone else. And they're a very fundamentalist religious group, right? And because of that, she just is so vitriolic to everyone, not only like other humans who are not within this sect of the religion, but just any non-human slash, you know, fantasy human race character. She is so racist too, in like very hurtful ways. And it's interesting in how that topic is broached, because there's multiple conversations about like, how do you challenge that bigotry? Do you challenge that bigotry? The answer is yes, you do. But also, like, how do you approach someone who has grown up in that bigotry? And how can you successfully not change their minds insofar, or change their outlook and bigotry to the, because again, like every fundamentalist in real life, right, there are people who like attach themselves to it because they're just hateful, horrible people. And then there are people who are born into that, and at some point in their life, they either just continue on believing all of the horrible, racist, or homophobic, bigoted stuff that they've always believed, or they are confronted with their own bigotry and they meet enough people to kind of widen their perspective and break them out of this horrific, like, abusive cycle and abusive community that they've been raised in. And it's those bigots who do have the potential for change, positive change. And that's kind of the approach that this particular book and this series has with this character. Because it is, like, that's just, we know this, right? There's, whether it's Christians, whether it's, you know, Muslims, whether it's certain sects of Judaism, well, yeah, any fundamentalists, any religious zealots, there are those who decide, who choose to be in that group, and there are those who are raised in that group, but at some point challenge it, leave it, make their own decision as to what they want to believe in. So yeah, all of that to say, that was the theme of this particular volume. It was handled as sensitively as I think it could be in a manga. Again, you know, iffy fantasy racism aside, I do think that there's care from Izumi to try and portray these characters, all of these characters, as like, with regards to their decisions. And, you know, I think there's a nuance here that very often can be lost when we're talking about issues like these. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate that approach. Mangas of the Library, even outside of the social commentary, is a really wonderful series. I do think it's really, really good, just beautifully illustrated, and has a really captivating story. There's a larger mystery happening as well. I haven't even mentioned that. There is a underlying there's some scheming going on, and I don't quite know how it's going to pan out, but I look forward to figuring out how it does. Next, we have another dark fantasy. This is much more within the fairy tale style, Western fantasy, I guess. Fairy tale style, not like orcs and elves and stuff. This is volume 10 of The Witch and the Beast by Kosuke Satake. This is another Kodansha release. Oh my goodness, a lot of those today. This is really, really good. This is the story of a young woman who has been cursed. And the only way that she can break the curse is with the kiss of a witch. And she has a partner who is a magus? Magician? I don't know. Something along those lines. Magic user. But this particular volume, she has been put in charge of looking after this child who is a threat. A lot of, like, there's people after him who want him because he absorbs the magic around him from other magical people and can use that as a weapon and as power, which is not, that's a scary thing. And so there are a group of people who are trying to hunt down this kid and also just trying to get rid of like other witches, because there's several witches, and you know, there's various factions happening. This continues to be a really good series. It's moody, it's interesting, it's got some great characters. I find, like, again, if you like dark fantasy, Western fantasy style of stories, this one will probably appeal to you quite a bit. I'm trying to think of something I can compare it to. Something, probably, not that this is a fantasy, but something like Requiem of the Rose King reminds me quite a bit of this. There used to be a couple like dark fantasy stories from Seven Seas that this kind of reminds me of. Doing a quick scan. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. There's not a huge amount, like, currently with, like, a Western approach of fairy tales that this, like, I have plenty of very Eastern Japanese, which is Eastern, fantasy kind of settings. Things like Holic and Origami. But this isn't quite as, like, brutal as Berserk, but, you know, that might appeal to you. That might have similar vibes. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe The Girl from the Other Side. This has a lot more action than that series does, but it has a bit of that kind of undercurrent of unease, maybe. It's a good series. The previous arc was really good. It had vampires. This arc has this magic kid. We'll see how it continues. I don't know really where it's going. It feels like it's kind of hitting the end of its storylines. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how much longer this one will go on, but check it out if it sounds like something that interests you. Speaking of fantasy and I guess Western, yeah, Western fantasy. This is another series that I really enjoy. I don't know if it's that popular. It did get an anime many years ago now at this point. It's on Netflix. I don't know how good it is. Haven't watched it. I've said this every time. But I really enjoy the manga. This is another one with caveats, but this is Drifting Dragons Volume 12 by Taku Kuwabara. This is the story of a, what are they called? Like dragoneering crew. They fly around on like an airship, and hunt dragons, in order to protect the airspace around the society. They're struggling. They're a ragtag group of dragoneers and all sorts of personalities and backgrounds, and you know, they're just all one big scruffy family, including Mika, who is kind of our main character, who is very much a like he approaches hunting dragons in a much more holistic way. He's a little bit like the main character, Leos of Delicious in Dungeon, wherein after they kill one of these dragons, they usually eat it or eat most of it. So this is like part fantasy, part cooking manga, part adventure. Like it is more than just a cooking manga, quote unquote. This isn't amongst the same lines as, What Did You Eat Yesterday or Sweetness and Lightning. I mean, it has recipes and cooking segments, but there's grander plots happening. It's not just cooking all of the time. As I've said before in regards to this series, I can understand why people wouldn't want to read this because there is a lot of similarities to historical whaling cultures, which this is very evocative of. And considering that whaling is still a practice that happens in Japan to this day, I can understand why you wouldn't want to read this or support a series that even in like a fantastical setting doesn't, is about that. So yeah, obviously this isn't going to be a series for everyone. That's that big caveat there. But I do think it is a really well done fantasy story for what it is. If you're wanting kind of this, it reminds me a lot of like Castle in the Sky Laputa, the Studio Ghibli film. It really has that vibe. Similarly to like, it's less of a comedy and less goofy as something like Golden Kamui, but that idea of like using, as a hunter, using every part of an animal that you kill in that holistic way of the circle of life approach is something that is also very prominent in that series. So if you're a fan of that, then maybe try this one. As I said, it's more fantastical. It's kind of a middle, I don't want to say it's a middle ground. I would say it belongs in the same category as a Golden Kamui or a Delicious in Dungeon, where there's, food and then there's also plot. And this one's a bit more fantasy like Delicious in Dungeon. But those other two are like very heavy on the comedy. This is funny, but it's not like inherently a comedy series. It's more of an Iyashikei slice of life style of story. So yeah, I don't know. It might be Delicious in Dungeon meets latter half Vinland Saga vibes. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of what it is jumping out at me in comparisons. But it is a really good series, and I encourage you guys to try it if you haven't. Drifting Dragons, not Drifting and Dragons. Drifting Dragons. That's the one. On to standard size manga. Oh my gosh, not a lot actually, considering. But we have first up a very funny rom-com that I am absolutely enjoying, and that is My Love Mix-Up Volume 6 by Aroko and Wataru Hinakure. This is the story of a teenage boy who has a crush on a girl, but one day discovers that his crush has a crush on someone else. And through a hilarious mishap, he incorrectly, who he believes this crush is about, he thinks that this guy, our main character, has a crush on him, and so he's trying to like consider his feelings, and there's just a hilarity ensues, but very quickly our main character, to his great chagrin, starts catching feelings for this other boy, And then very quickly realizes that the girl that he likes and that he thought likes this other boy actually likes this other guy, who's our main character's best friend. So he's just stuck with feelings for this other dude. And amazingly, they end up they muddle through it and they end up dating. So they are now currently figuring out things. It's very sweet. It's very funny. This is the same artist as My Love Story. This is the same author as High School Debut, I believe. So a lot of funny moments, a lot of really great characters. I've said it before regarding the series, but it's really nice that this series doesn't just renege on our main character's bisexuality, because that is what he is. And so they commit to it. It's not just a funny haha bit oh, isn't it silly that this teenage boy fell in love with another teenage boy, which is what could have happened. The series doesn't do that, thankfully. Very happily to share. So yeah, this is just an all-around wonderful time. I love Aruko's art. The expressions in this are so freaking funny, you guys. It's just a great time. And then Wataru Hinekure is really good at capturing kind of the really funny aspects, and then also the more serious tone and the drama of being a teen in love. Yeah, My Love Mix-Up is definitely one to check out. Plus, it's not super duper long. It's only 9 volumes. So we are 2/3 of the way through already, which is a little bit scary. Last, for the standard manga, a series that I adore, just continues to be phenomenal. This is volume 38 of Yona of the Dawn by Mizuho Kusanagi. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is a fantastic series. Certainly a story that can appeal to anyone. I highly encourage everyone to read this manga, regardless of your normal, oh, I only really read shonen stuff. It's not, just try it. You will probably like it a lot. Yeah, story of a princess who is ousted from the castle after the assassination of her father by her cousin. Oh my gosh, who up until that point she was in love with. So it's a big betrayal. But she and her bodyguard, closest companion, one of her best friends, embark on a journey. And they meet this weird, guy, priest maybe, out in the woods. And he tells them, oh hey, you are the reincarnation of the legendary Crimson King, who is a figure of old and is the one who united the nation in eras past. So there's the 4 dragon warriors that this Crimson Dragon King had. They are bestowed upon you. Go find them. And so they go find them, and now they are trying to, I don't know, unite the nation again. And Yona is placed in this very interesting position wherein she's trying to help her people, and she's been betrayed by one of the people closest to her, but having gained experience and insight, she now recognizes that it's not an inherently bad thing that her cousin did what he did. Her father was a very flawed ruler. But at the same time, she's not just he murdered her dad. There's a lot of very complicated feelings. She still cares about him, but understandably is very upset still. And also is actually, the one who should be well, there's the argument of like who should be the ruler, because you know her cousin is actually the older one from the older sibling, but his dad, you know, got ousted. Well, not really, he got killed. And so through the succession wars there as well, but also their nation is under attack from a neighboring empire. It's such a good series, you guys. It's so good. All of the characters are wonderful. I love the dragons. I love Yona. I love Hawk. I love Swan. I love just everyone. All of them are good. They're such good characters. Such captivating reading experience. It's one of those series that like once you start, you just blaze through it. You don't want it to stop. And if this series, I don't say this about many series, because I'm always like, I prefer series to end, to have like a conclusion. I'm really not a fan of series that go over like 20 volumes, 30 at the max. There's some exceptions in my personal collection, but like, I just usually get tired by that stage. I feel like most stories can be wrapped up in 20 volumes. In a very satisfactory way. But Yona could go on forever, and I just want to keep reading it. I just feel like I could read this series forever. And so, volume 38, just fantastic. Cannot wait for 39. BL. We have a couple BL this month. The first one being from Kuma. This is a complete story in a single volume. This is A Home Far Away by Teki Yatsuda. This is the story of a teenage boy who meets this mysterious, handsome stranger one night whilst he is trying to avoid going home. And their friendship that ultimately ends up in them running away together, because our main character, the younger teen boy, he grew up in an extremely religious, fundamentalist religious family. His parents, especially his mother, are super overprotective because he also has this rare blood disease, which I don't know if it, like, they never say what it is. I want to say it may be hemophilia, wherein your blood doesn't clot. So if you get a cut, you have to take coagulants to make your blood clot. I don't know if that's what it is. I also, like, I don't know, because this is set in 1990/1991. It could be HIV. I don't know. They say that he was, they don't say that he was inherently born with, well, they might, I don't know, it's been a little, I can't quite remember. But, so this kid, like, has a very, tumultuous relationship with religion and faith and belief and God and Jesus and, you know, all of these things. But, you know, he grew up in this household, and so he does have a very strong attachment. And all of his coping mechanisms from being a very emotionally and physically abusive household means that our other main character, who's just had like a really kind of a very horrific childhood himself, but in a very polar opposite sort of way. His mother was a drug addict and like prostituted herself for a lot of his childhood. His father was physically abusive until his mother murdered him. There's like a lot of stuff going on. This has been described as like Banana Fish, but in a single volume versus 19 volumes. And that is a pretty apt comparison. Like, if you I don't want to say enjoyed, but like if you like Banana Fish, this is very similar in themes, similar trigger warnings. I've already talked about, emotional and physical abuse. There's drug addiction, a lot of drug addiction. There's sexual assault, rape, and all like very, very weaponized religious zealotry in this. Child sexual abuse in this as well. There's just like every trigger warning. Well, not every trigger, like all of those trigger warnings. All those trigger warnings from Banana Fish you can like attach to this one, including a tragic ending. This is not a happy ending story. I mean, in some ways it kind of is, but it's not. These two don't live happily ever after, right? Like they don't start a farm in Wyoming and just have peaceful days for the next, 50 years. No, this is a sad. These are two sad, broken people who come from like having no support systems to becoming each other's support systems, and then ultimately deciding to stay with each other, even if that means mutual destruction. It's good. It's sad. This is not one to read when you need a quick pick-me-up. As I said, maybe don't read this as like a chaser to Banana Fish, because it's gonna make you feel sad. But in saying that, it is very, very good. I'm just going to try and open it to something that's not like super explicit. The artwork is gorgeous. There's some sex scenes in here, so that's why I'm trying to be a bit careful. But yeah, it's a good one. I like it a lot. But man, it is a sad book. Not going to be for everyone. So if that's not your thing, if you need your couple to live happily ever after, then avoid this book. This is not for you. Next we have another BL debut, this one for an ongoing series. I haven't actually read this one yet because I literally got it like an hour ago. It came in right in the nick of time to be shown in this monthly wrap-up. But this is volume 1 of The Dragon's Betrothed by Meguro Hinohara. This is the same creator, as you can probably tell, of Therapy Game and Therapy Game Restart and Secret XXX, which is kind of the main original story that Therapy Game is a spin-off of. I don't remember if we have any more of her works in English quite yet. Maybe we do. Maybe my memory is just lacking me right now. But I'm a big fan of this creator. I love Therapy Game. And so when a new series from her was licensed, I absolutely had to get it. Really funny, fun, great characters. I can't speak to this one, but if it's anything like her previous works that I've read, then I will probably enjoy this quite a bit. I don't know how explicit this is, so we'll see. Presumably, this is a story about a guy who is betrothed to a dragon. I don't know how, I don't know why. I guess secrets shall be revealed to me in due course once I actually sit down and read it. But yeah, it doesn't look super duper explicit or anything either, which isn't to say that that won't change in subsequent volumes. But yeah, I am really looking forward to this particular series, especially because this is a creator that I've enjoyed previous works from. I also finished a BL this month. A BL from June. I would never expect them to finish something, but here we are. It's a Christmas miracle. This is Only the Flower Knows, Volume 3 by Rihito Takarai. This is obviously a 3-volume series about, I think it's a university. They're like both young men. I don't remember. This is an interesting. Well, no, this story. This is an interesting license. This is one of those series that I read way back in the day when I was still reading scans. I read it because this is the same artist as 7 Days. Rito Takarai, who has since released 10 Count, which is very popular. Not a series that I enjoy, but this predates that. And I can only imagine it's because of 10 Count that this got licensed. I think they had it digitally for a long time as well. But this is one of Takarai's like more prominent works. The fact that June like licensed new things was always a surprise, and this is no different. But yeah, I don't remember if I read all of it in scans. I couldn't tell you. Maybe I did. I haven't actually sat down and reread this one, but I do remember liking it. So that's why I picked it up. If nothing else, like the art, Takarai's art is always really beautiful. I don't think there's anything inherently super explicit in this. Like, there's gonna be some sexy scenes, but I don't think we have quite to the level of some of the stuff that we've seen in the past with other BL, even in this pack of books that I have. But yeah, nice to just kind of have a new series that only was released recently, also end. Like, June, who are you? Who is this? How did you do this? That doesn't mean my faith in them has grown at all, but it does mean that I am happy that I don't have to wait years and years with a faint glimmer of hope that someday we may get the second or third volume. So yeah, nice to have this one ended. Now, if we're going to be talking about explicit, we have volume 4 of Kaidashi by Rama Rosaria. This is same creator as Birds of Shangri-La, as Liquor and Cigarettes, and Void is another Zaria book as well. This is a story of a half werewolf who falls in love with the young master of a mafia family, which is already like a wild premise. But we find out that actually this mafia family has been hunting down werewolves. The head of this mafia family, who's the grandfather of this the guy, has been on werewolf hunts, murdering all these werewolves that are hiding in society in order to get revenge for the untimely death of his son and wife, who is the other main character's parents. So there is a werewolf versus mafia war happening, which is all good and tense, and oh my gosh, it's like Romeo and Juliet. If Romeo was in the mafia and Juliet was a werewolf. Yeah, this is really good. This certainly fits within, I guess, like the monster fucker style of story, because our werewolf character can turn into a wolf. But also it appeals to those who are fans of Omegaverse / ABO, because our wolf character goes into heat. When there's a full moon, he goes into heat. Therefore, sexy stuff must happen. For a whole week as well. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is a lot of energy and calories burned. I mean, Zaria's books, like, they have plot, and they're good plots, but like, it's all excuse for sexy stuff. This book doesn't have as much sexy stuff as you would expect. but our couple has been separated. A lot of the war is about to happen, and what will happen when these star-crossed lovers have to decide about the person that they love or their community. And man, it's good. It's really good. Yeah, Coyote is a great series, and if you are a fan of like werewolf romance or monster romance or just Ramo Rosaria or Omegaverse, the heat aspect of Omegaverse, there's no like nesting or impreg or anything that I know of in this series. There's none of that in the series so far. I don't think it's an Omegaverse series. It just draws the heat aspect of it. I don't sentences you never want to explain to your grandparents. So Coyote, very good series. Happy to have volume 4. Something a little bit different. This is also, I guess, technically a BL. I mean, it's a BL, but it's not a Japanese BL. This is a manhwa. This is a manhwa of a series that I love. This is the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, Murazushi, the comic by Luo Di Chengqi. I don't know if that's even close to correct. I am sorry. And based off of the novel by MXTX. Yeah, I mean this is the comic. I have read bits and pieces. The not safe for work specials, bonus episodes, that weren't allowed to be published on Webtoon or wherever, Legend, wherever it was that this was on, are currently still being released by the artist. Not in full color, just in like black and white. And I see those all the time because I follow a lot of, Murazushi people, fandom stuff. So I see, every time there's an update, I see the sexy stuff happening. And I've seen frames of this, like it's a very popular comic, so I've seen it floating around. As you saw in full color. Yeah, I mean, if you're wanting to try the series and you don't want to read the novel because you don't like words, maybe try this one. It's a good adaptation. If you're a fan of the donghua, which is the animated version, maybe try this one. I don't know. You have so many options. Murazushi, you have so many options. And as a unapologetic MXTX fan, this was, of course I was going to get this. Why even ask that question? On to light novels. I told you there's a lot this month. So the first is a debut that I was so excited for. I pre-ordered this pretty much as soon as I was able to. This one was a license that I was really excited about. It's a series that recently got an anime. I don't know how well known or well regarded the anime is, and I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to it. I think there's fairly positive reaction to it, but this one, the novel, is quite well known, and as soon as I heard the premise, I was like, I want to read that. So I have since bought it and have since read it, and I really enjoyed this first volume. So this is Raven of the Inner Palace by Koko Shirakawa. This is the story of the Raven consort, who is obviously a consort in sort of title and name only. She isn't really expected to be, entertaining the emperor. More so, she is part of the inner palace and gives kind of magical assistance and advice, magical / spiritual assistance and advice to a lot of the other inner palace maidens, other consorts, and on occasion the emperor himself. So we have our main character who has been the Raven consort for quite a few years at this point. She was brought in by the former Raven consort, and it's not like a blood related thing. There is a golden chicken that decides on who the next Raven consort is, presumably because it has like magical potential and can tell, oh, this girl, she has the powers that we need. She has the potential. And so our main character, she has, after the untimely death of her mother, she's taken in by the former Raven consort and trained up, and now lives as the current Raven consort. As our story begins, she is visited by the newly placed emperor. His grandfather died, and he's been emperor for a little while, but his grandfather was like really, really strict and belligerent, and doesn't really have a good reputation, and he was a hugely paranoid person, so much so that he sent the current emperor, his grandson, to kind of an outer palace. He basically disowned him and ignored him because he never wanted to give up being the emperor. Pretty stock standard for a lot of historical leaders, killing and or getting rid of anyone who may succeed them, I should say, and especially a preemptive strike. So I don't know what happened to this current emperor's father. I presume he died. I think the grandpa killed him. A lot of people were killed over the course of this series, and a lot of people were killed in the past, and that is referenced throughout this first novel. A lot of this, so initially the current emperor, he goes to the Raven consort to help him solve a mystery regarding a jade earring, which she helps out with, and then the subsequent chapters are about her helping a lot of the other consorts with various problems, kind of mysteries to be solved, right? And because she has the spiritual powers as well, or magical powers, it gives her this ability to have control over kind of ghosts and the soul and things like that. So a lot of these mysteries are based around things that ended up in people losing their lives. So there's a lot of giving rest and relief to ghosts that kind of continue to exist within this palace, because there's a very wrought history. There is a lot of mysteries and moving pieces in this. It's really good. I enjoyed this first volume very much. There's definitely this series is definitely going to be diving into, I guess, or developing a romance between our main character and this emperor. Who knows it? Well, I've been around the block enough times to know that they are going to get together in some capacity. As of right now, she puts up with him. He's absolutely like smitten, although he would never say so in as many words. And he realizes that she would not react well if he said that either. But they're both people with very tumultuous pasts, and because of that, they kind of understand each other in a way. And also they know each other's secrets in some capacity, because our main character has her own secrets as well. Really good first novel. Really enjoyed it. I cannot wait for the second one. Next, we go into continuing novels, light novels. The first one, I haven't read this one yet, but I've read the previous two. I really enjoy this series, and I'm really happy that it got licensed, because it wasn't inherently a sure thing. A lot of the novels I'm interested in, Danmei not included. They certainly aren't like the most popular series, but Seven Seas once again has heard my cry, and so this is volume 3 of the Case Files of Jeweler Richard, by Nanako Sujimura, with illustrations by Urako Yukihiro. This is, just more. A lot of the light novels I've started to realize are very focused on like chapter, I don't want to say monster of the week, but like mystery of the week, which appeals to me. I've always been a fan of, whodunits and mysteries, and I grew up on a lot of those. So the idea of a series focusing on like problem solving and solving mysteries with these main characters is a good time. I'm always there for that. This is the series is about a university student called Seiji who has a very strong sense of self and of justice. He's a very upstanding young man, and he always has like this, his real purpose in life, I guess, or how he wants to be, is like some people's heroes. He wants to stand up for justice and help people. And one day he runs into a beautiful foreign man in the streets of, I don't remember. I don't think it was Ginza. I think it was somewhere else. But he aids this beautiful man who is being kind of accosted by just some rowdy drunks, and who are trying to cause problems. He gets rid of them and helps this guy, and also is just like, man, you are the most beautiful person I have ever seen. And subsequently, because of that, he is contacted by this beautiful man, Richard, who we find out is a jeweler by trade, and he has just recently opened his atelier in Ginza, wherein people can come and choose gemstones, precious gems, pieces of jewelry, because he is a jeweler, and he can, if you have a gem or a cut jewel already, he can kind of appraise that. He can also help get it turned into a piece of jewelry, or you can buy directly through him pieces of jewelry each. So he's just recently gotten to Japan. He's like this, just talented polyglot who just is very well read, very educated, very, just the perfect man all around. He also has one hell of a sweet tooth, but because of Seiji helping in his time of need, Richard decides to offer Seiji a position at his new business as kind of his personal assistant. He gets him to like look after the office and welcome clients and all sorts of things. And it's a lot better money than the part-time job that he has at the moment. And also the girl that Seiji likes, has a crush on. She's really into like geology and rocks and gems, which is my kinds of people, I gotta say. So he like really likes Richard. He's very, he finds him like such an interesting person. And again, he's very attracted to him, in, you know, the ways that matter. He's very slow on the uptake on his own feelings, but we'll get to that. But so subsequently, Seiji starts working for Richard, and each chapter is about a different customer coming in and having a piece appraised, or, you know, something along those lines. And then the history of the jewel that is the focus kind of intertwines with that. This is a series that we have the anime adaptation available from, well, Crunchyroll now. We have, it's in streaming as well. We have the manga adaptation also from Seven Seas. And then, of course, we have the novel, which is this. I've said before, like, typically with adaptations, I was initially introduced to the series via the anime, and I enjoyed the anime. But usually, like, a lot of times I do pick up anime for series that I enjoy, especially if it's a really good adaptation. But typically for like novel versus manga versions of the same story, I will always go for the novel if that's the original. So that's what I did with this. So I can't speak to the quality of the manga, although I know it's pretty well regarded. Really enjoy the series. As I said, haven't sat down and read this particular book yet, just because I don't have a huge amount of time. But yeah, I really enjoy the series. Really happy that we got an English release for this, and I look forward to more. Next, we have actually the final book of this particular part, another light novel. This is Ascendance of a Bookworm. I'll do anything to become a librarian. Part 4, founder of the Royal Academy's so-called Library Committee, Volume 5, which is the final of this arc, which means that we are heading into the last arc or part of this series. At least I believe so. There's so many volumes of this, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just dumb, but I think there's 5 parts. And each part gets longer. And I think this is the last one. I don't know. Maybe I just am confused and dumb. There might be another volume. I haven't read this. I haven't read any of this part yet, but I am a big fan of Bookworm. I don't doubt that I will enjoy it once I actually sit down and read it. This is by Miya Kazuki with illustrations by Yoshina. Another series that has a very popular anime, has a manga adaptation also from J-Novel, and then obviously these novels from J-Novel. I initially started this series via the novels, and then I watched the anime pretty quickly after that. The anime hadn't quite come out yet when I had first started reading it. And I've read like bits and pieces of the manga, but I don't feel an urge to continue just because it feels like just a bit superfluous. Really, really enjoy this series. If you're someone who enjoys light novels, but you're tired of kind of the more male power fantasy dominated isekai that is still very prevalent in the medium, then I would encourage you to try this one. It is an isekai, but it is just, oh, it's so good. This is the story of a woman in Japan who, after her untimely death, being buried under her extensive library of books, she wakes up in another world in the body of a sickly child. She's like 6 or 7 years old. No, 6. Which is a big point, because 7 is when you become like an adult. Not really, but like you become a real true person. You come of age. You can start working in this weird fantasy medieval setting. And so she wakes up as a sickly child, but more horrifically is the fact that she now lives in a society where books are, and literacy is not really widespread. You have to be from a very high class to even have access to books. And so her new goal is to basically like reinvent books and widespread literacy and the printing press. And so she can build up a library, and then she can live her dream of being a librarian, because that was her dream throughout her first life. She had just gotten a job as a librarian, and she was so excited. And then lo and behold, she died. So before ever being able to live that dream, she now has to kind of build it from scratch. But in saying that, oh my gosh, so much has changed. So much has happened over the course of these 4 parts. This is a phenomenal series, and if you've only seen the anime as well, I encourage you to read the novels. They are really good. They're very dense. There's a lot happens in them, but all of the characters are really interesting. Mine's the crack up. She's just wonderful, our main character. And it never feels too much like a power fantasy. It never feels like all of the characters make pretty understandable decisions, and there's some really interesting moral dilemmas that are presented in this series. I think it's one that people should check out. It's very, very good. We are continuing with novels, but now we are on to the danme. So first up is a new debut. I also only got this yesterday, so I haven't actually sat down and read it. I don't really know. I watched like 1 episode of the donghua of this and just never went back to it. Not because I wasn't interested, but I only have so many hours in the day. And unfortunately, I have to like choose how to spend my time wisely. I don't have any days off, just quietly, so it's not like I can even sit down on weekends and dedicate like a whole day to bang out a show. It's really like, oh, maybe I can watch an episode or 2. I make the decision of watching like a couple episodes of something, or reading a book, or, you know, any of the multitude of other things that I need to do. So I haven't started reading this yet. I cannot speak to the story. I know this is really popular. As I said, have seen an episode or 2 of the donghua, the animated adaptation. And it's a very different, I guess, style. All of Seven Seas' series are very different, because authors obviously have different approaches. But this is Thousand Autumns, Quenqui? I don't know. Let's not even attempt that. By Meng Ji. From what I remember of the donghua, there's this guy who is like the head disciple of some particular sect, and when fighting either bad people, he's either betrayed or something, I don't know. He ends up with amnesia. He wakes up, he's been injured, and he wakes up with amnesia, and he's taken in by like this other mysterious, sexy guy from a different sect. And because he has amnesia, he's like, oh yes, you are the head disciple here, and wherever. you just lost your memory fighting a ghost. And he's like, oh, okay. But very quickly realizes that that was a lie. And I don't know if he fully recovers his memory. I shouldn't be describing this series because I really don't know. I do not know. That is my vague recollection of like the first 2 episodes of the animation version. These two are not like, these two dynamic really isn't. I mean, it might be similar to Scum Villain's dynamic. I don't know. This is not like a lovey-dovey pair from my understanding. This is a much more plot-focused story. I don't want to say that either, because Danmai has really solid plot and is typically more plot than anything. Yeah, I don't know. This is a very popular series. It's one that I have been meaning to get back into. I might have better success, or at least a higher priority to read the novel, now, especially now that I have it, versus sitting down and watching the animated version. But yeah, I am interested in continuing this one, especially because it's not really a dynamic that I've had the opportunity to explore in Danmei yet. So, I mean, here's hoping. It is super duper popular. It's one of those series that like constantly gets mentioned and recommended. It's certainly one of the more notable series within the Danmei fandom. And so I look forward to it. I also completed a Danmai series this month. This is one that I pre-ordered. It arrived at my proxy because the shipping situation for this publisher is just, it's a big sigh. So I have been ordering any of their releases that I want and sent to my US proxy. So this is the second half of Little Mushroom Revelations by Shishi, with translation by Zhao. This is a sci-fi series set in a dystopic future wherein a mushroom who gains sentience and is able to create or replicate a human form after meeting a human. So this is like in a post-apocalyptic dystopic future wherein the lands of Earth have been so poisoned and toxified. I guess it turns into like this highly toxic wilderness, maybe a la like Noska with a dash of The Last of Us, because people are dying left, right, and center, and there is a lot of very violent, animals and things, and humanity kind of perseveres through it all. But there's a high likelihood of infection and, turning into a monster if you get infected with this toxicity. And so our main character, he is a sentient mushroom. And after meeting a human for the first time, he kind of gains this insight to humanity, but after gaining awareness, he also gains awareness that his spore, his precious spore, which is his baby, I guess, his child, was taken from him, either through, kind of a retrieval or research purposes. Somebody took his spore, and so he has decided to infiltrate human society to try and recover his most precious spore. And so when he gets to the human settlement, they have a process in where people who are returning from the wilderness, there's a judgment that happens. And there is a guy who, through, I don't know, power of intuition, he can judge and see whether or not you are human or not, if you've been infected. And so this mushroom is like freaking out because he's like, you know, this guy who does this judgment, he is, you know, 100% right all of the time. He's never made an error, and that's part of the reason why humanity has persisted so long. His success rate is like 99.999999999 recurring. I don't think he's ever made a mistake, except although he has this perception, like he can tell something's off with this guy, with our main character, but he also deems him to be human. And so our little mushroom is able to kind of start his new life within human society, whilst also looking for his spore. And the last book ended on a big cliffhanger. This is like a really decent sci-fi. I would say that like Peachflower House is an interesting one because I don't think their translation efforts are to the professional standards that like mainstream publishing is, and arguably Seven Seas. I know people have some issues with some of their translations, but like Peachflower House, their releases feel a lot more like very specific for fans. They are releasing very popular series, and so I'm sure a lot of people are very, very happy with them. And there's nothing like inherently janky with the translation, but it feels very much like if you're not up to date with kind of Danmai, if you don't know all of the expectations of how Chinese web novels are written, then you're probably going to feel a little bit lost. I also feel like there's less, and again, this is maybe a divisive issue, but there's not a lot of editorializing insofar as this really feels like a web novel, like in a print version. I feel like there is maybe a more professional way that some of this could have been translated, or I don't want to say rewritten because that gives a negative impression of like they should just change it. That's not what I mean. I mean like this feels very literal in some ways and over verbose, which may be just, I mean, I'm sure is part of the original writing, but I don't know that it works or has the same effect in English. So I say all of that because I feel like if this is your first Danmei and you're coming at it as a novel reader who doesn't like have any prior experience reading, you know, fan translations of web novels, and you're not really in the Danmei space, you've only read like professionally published books from large publishing houses, it feels more like a self-published work because it literally is a self-published work in China. And then this is just like the English adaptation or the English version of that with no editorial oversight in any capacity, which I do think is a weakness. I do think means that if you are someone who, is more used to, if you're expecting like a literary novel with this, although the themes and the writing style and the story may all be what you expect and may play into like those expectations, I do think there is a more amateur-like nature to this book purely because it is from a boutique publisher. Again, that's not inherently a criticism of Peach Flower House, but I would say that this is a release probably more geared towards either existing Little Mushroom fans or existing Danmei fans who are willing to like accept, quote unquote, a less than professional release. Basically, you're not getting War and Peace here, right? You're not even getting like Seven Seas' Danmai releases, because again, although they've had their issues, and I know people kind of get a bit defensive, fan translators are not professional translators, and they can do a fantastic job, but there's a reason people get paid for translation, and there's a reason people go to school to learn to become a translator, because there are skills that you can only develop with that knowledge. Not everyone, not every person who is a multilingualist can translate, because translation is not only the art of understanding how, like, putting a piece of text from one language into another, but in writing. And I think that's the aspect that Peach Flower House might not have, is they don't have strong enough writers of the English language. Maybe, I'm speculating, but that's how I see it after reading 2 or 3 of their series. And again, I do enjoy, I enjoy this series. I like Little Mushroom. But it's not, different standards maybe. So just be aware of that if you're hoping to buy any of their publications. Now, I've done all that, not complaining, because I think it's a valid and well-meaning criticism, but I say all that, and despite that, I still have bought another one of their releases. I haven't read this one yet, but this is another one that is very popular, and from everything that I've heard, will definitely be like my thing. This is Golden Terrace. I don't know who it's by. I couldn't. Kangwoo Bin Bai, maybe? I don't know. This is the complete series in a box set. It has like a very light paper, extra dust jacket, maybe? I don't really know why they styled it this way, aside from wanting to do a full release initially. It's a nice box set. I will give them that. I have not even looked at this release yet, because again, I have other things to read and it's on the list. This one's probably my first one I will get to, because it's complete, comparatively to this and Little Mushroom, because although I complained I haven't actually read that second book, I will read so I can finish those series before I jump into Thousand Autumns, because I don't want to start a whole bunch of new stuff and then wait and keep having to wait for them to continue. With this deluxe edition, it actually came with a bunch of like merchandise for the characters that I do not know, because I haven't read it yet. This is, oh my gosh, there's a wooden charm of presumably our main characters. It would be a bit weird if they weren't our main characters. And then we also have, sorry, they're all wrapped up in plastic and bubble wrap and stuff. I don't really want to pull it apart. Okay. We have acrylic stand of, I don't know, one of our characters. I presume this is the, like, the love interest. He has that look. He has the look of the love interest. The male lead is, and then the other one, presumably, is the main character. So much tape. and bubble wrap. I appreciate it, but it makes life hard. Yeah, this is definitely the main character. He's got that wayfish look. Well, I don't know, that's not the right word, but these two, you can tell. Yeah, so they are acrylic stands. I don't know how. I mean, that's a nice addition. That's a nice additional extra. Thanks, Peach Flower House, or Blossom. I just now even forgetting Peach Flower House. I don't know. This particular limited edition was relegated to their website only. You can actually buy their releases, their wider releases, non-limited edition ones, via, Amazon and Book Depository and stuff. Although people have had issues, again, I don't think that's inherently anything nefarious. It's more to do with being a tiny boutique publisher, and we are in the middle of just a printing and demand crisis for books. So if you are someone who is waiting on books, it's not because they hate you, it's because, oh my god, there's no paper. It's costing 3 times the amount to print a book than it did 2 years ago. And global shipping is still just beyond crazy. Not only ship times, but cost is just out of this world. I don't mean to be devil's advocate, but there is a multitude of facets. It is not a black and white issue. Yeah, I can't speak to the quality of the series. I know that this one is very lovey-dovey, very sweet. This is a series you go for that true love, wonderful, everything's happy endings style of story. Whereas some of the more recent Danmai that has been licensed isn't that. So if you're looking for something that's just more focused on just a very wonderful, sweet couple, check this one out. I think, again, this is my knowledge from others' explanations. Okay, we are in the home stretch. Not quite done yet, though. We have a comic. This is a web comic, a print release of a web comic that I haven't actually read, but I do follow the author on Twitter, or the creator, the artist on Twitter. And I've been aware of this comic for a long time, so I backed the crowdfunding campaign. This is Countdown to Countdown by Valinksi, book 1. I think the series is still going. I don't know. It's a sci-fi. It has flower kind of allegories and magical powers. I don't know. I haven't read it yet. It looks cool. I'm a fan of this artist, and I've been wanting to read this. It also came with postcards because obviously it wasn't kickstarted. It was crowdfunded through, I think, Hivemind. I don't know. It was crowdfunded through its own website for a wider release. Hiveworks. I'm not completely forgetful. So this was a little while. Obviously, again, these sorts of things take a little while, and I'm not in any rush to really jump into it, but hopefully I will read this, enjoy it, and then I can continue online because it is a webcomic through Hiveworks. So it's not even on I don't know, might be on Tapas. I don't think so. But yeah, just nice to have. Last but certainly not least, another comic, another crowdfunded comic. This was through Kickstarter, and in fact, I backed all 3 Kickstarters for the original releases for this. This is the hardcover omnibus, like collected release from a writer-artist who I've enjoyed previous works for. I helped kickstart her previous work as well. In various forms, both in the singles and the collected edition. So this was one that I was very happy to support. This is For Goodness Sake by Kaylin Smith. This is the story of a guy who gets cursed and looks very demonic. And he meets this girl, this hippie, who tells him, hey, come join me and go on a road trip, and you can try and, learn how to stop your curse, but also maybe just discover more about yourself. I really like Kaylin Smith's character writing. I've enjoyed her previous work, which is... the name escapes me right now. That's a really bad look, but... Enjoyed previous comics by her. Came with a sticker, "You're the worst," another sticker, and then a bookmark which has the 2 main characters. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. Yeah, nice to follow up this short complete series in one book. It was super expensive, so always happy to support this artist or this creator when I can. So that was everything for March. Oh my goodness, that was a lot. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, opinions on anything that I talked about today. A lot of danmei this month. Quite a few novels, quite a bit of manga. Finished some manga, started some manga. Let me know how you feel about any of the titles that I was talking about. Do you agree with me or totally disagree? I am happy to hear any any disagreements. That's totally fine. For those who are new to the channel, you can also find on this channel, as well as on podcasting platforms, the podcast that I co-host called Read Right to Left, where we talk about manga, and this coming month we are talking about a danmei, excitingly enough. If you are new to the channel and you enjoyed this, I would appreciate if you could subscribe. I post videos like this every month, but I also do reviews and bits and pieces throughout the month as well. What else? You can follow me for now still on Twitter at GEE_reads. I'm on there on a somewhat regular basis. That's also how you can follow the podcast. As mentioned, you can find the podcast on pretty much every podcasting platform out there, especially the major ones, Spotify and Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts and all those lovely places. Yeah, otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. Yeah, I will catch you in the next video. Stay safe, look after yourself, be kind, and I'll see you next time. Bye!